What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be going over my SHEAR build guide here for Season 5, and this is actually something that I was really excited to test out on the PTR, but I never got a chance to because I never got the Shard of Virithil, so I'm happy to finally get it put together and to bring it to you guys so you guys can check it out and see if it's something that you're interested in trying out. So before we get started, I did want to mention two things. So yesterday I put out a Stormclaw build guide, and a link to that is down in the description below. And in that video, for the gameplay footage, I used a character that was a fresh level 100 with very basic gear. And in today's video, I'm using a character with a little bit more time investment to get that gear up to probably mid to just above mid tier. Nothing best in slot though. And the damage numbers are a little bit flashier, but it would require you to get maybe a little lucky and spend a little bit more time kind of min-maxing the build. So my question is to you guys, which one of those do you prefer? Do you prefer a basic setup so you know exactly what you're getting into when you reach level 100 with your character? Or do you prefer something that's a little bit flashier that gives you an idea as to what you can expect when you invest a little bit more time in your build? And then secondly, I just wanted to say that in my opinion, this build is a perfect example as to why the Druid needs a dedicated two-hand weapon slot. Because if you could combine something like the Shard of Virithil with, say, the Crone Staff, you could make a Stormclaw build that would have a lot more damage and be a lot more viable in terms of where the meta is at currently. Well, let me know what you guys think down in the comments section about those two things. Do you think the Druid needs a dedicated two-hand weapon slot, and what kind of gameplay footage do you prefer in your build guide videos? But now that we've gotten all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and go over the build. So as you can see on our skills, we are using SHEAR. We're going to be using Cataclysm because we are going to be using the Mountaineeric Ring. Then we have Debilitating Roar for that big damage reduction. We have the Earthen Bulwark for that dedicated crowd control break. Then we are using Bloodhound to get that added attack speed. Then we are going to be using Maul to easily keep up all of our buffs. For our Spirit Boons, we're using Weariness on the Deer, we are Spirit Bonded into the Eagle, and we're picking up Iron Feather as well as swooping attacks. Then on the Wolf, we're picking up Calamity to extend the duration of Cataclysm, and then on the Snake, we're going to be using Calm Before the Storm to cool down Cataclysm that much faster. Moving on to the aspects and uniques of the build, we are going to be running an Andariel's Visage with this setup. Now, if you do not have one, you can get away with running a Godslayer Crown, but I would highly recommend getting your hands on an Andariel's Visage as soon as you can. Then for the chest piece, we're going to be running the Hectic aspect to cool down our skills that much faster. On the gloves, we're running the Rapid aspect. For the pants, we are going to be using a pair of Temerity. So Temerity this season got a pretty sizable buff. You can now get up to 100% barrier of your effective HP pool, basically giving you double HP. And they also added a big chunk of damage reduction while healthy, making these pants incredibly good for building out survivability on your characters. Then for the boots, we are going to be running the Wildheart Hunger unique, and it's pretty obvious as to why we're doing that. You get a massive chunk of multiplicative damage with these boots, as well as a pretty sizable amount of survivability and movement speed with those extra ranks to height and senses. For our weapons, we are going to be running a Shard of Virithil with a totem, and on our totem, we are going to slot in the aspect of Moonrise here. For our amulet, we're running the aspect of Calm Breeze. Then on our first ring, we're running the aspect of Adaptability. And then for our second ring, we are going to be using the Mountaineeric Ring unique. Moving on to our gear and stats, I would highly recommend that you get all of your masterworking crits into attack speed on your Andariel's Visage if you can. On the chest piece, I like to run max life, willpower, and armor, and for the temp rings, I like to go with Debilitating Roar duration, as well as a lucky hit chance to freeze or stun or immobilize. Now for this build, I highly recommend that you get yourself a chest piece with a greater affix to armor and at least one masterworking crit into that armor roll, so that way you can reach armor cap with just one piece of gear. Then for the gloves, we're going to be running max life, attack speed, and willpower with damage to distant enemies, as well as, again, a lucky hit chance to freeze, stun, or immobilize is perfectly fine here. Now, as you can see here, we are going to try to get as many crits into willpower as possible, and that's because we no longer scale that high with our Thunderstruck node, so what we're trying to do is make up that damage multiplier by scaling our willpower this season, because they buff the amount of damage we can get out of our willpower on the Druid class, so that is what our goal is for this build. On our pair of Temerity, obviously, we're just going to jack up the damage reduction as much as we can. However, if you do get some max life rolls, that's fine too. For our Wildheart boots, because we don't really get any benefit out of the shape-shifting attack speed because we'll be in human form most of the time, we're going to be trying to get as many ranks to height and senses as possible to increase our movement speed as well as our survivability. Onto the Shard of Virithil, we're just going to be trying to get as many masterworking crits as we can into the basic attack speed affix to increase our attack speed that much more. For our amulet, we're going to be running ranks to quick shift, max life, willpower percent, damage to distant enemies, and movement speed. speed. Now, you will be able to cap out your Thunderstruck node with just 2 rolls of damage to distant enemies on your gear pieces. So after that, you can run whatever extra tempering you would like to run. I just go with damage to distant enemies because it has the highest damage modifier. And then the reason why we're picking up willpower percent here is, again, we're just trying to crank up our damage using willpower as much as possible. You can also run Defiance as well as Nature's Reach if you get those affixes instead. Then onto our first ring, we're running max life, attack speed, and willpower, and then the temperings are damage to distant enemies as well as the Cataclysm cooldown reduction. Now, I would recommend getting at least 2 crits into your Cataclysm cooldown reduction so that way you have no issue keeping your Cataclysm up 100% of the time. And then for our Mountaineeric ring, we're just critting 1 time into ranks to Endless Tempest and then trying to get as much willpower as we can on this ring, because the Mountaineeric ring actually has quite a lot of willpower it rolls with, so definitely try to get that up as high as possible. Then onto our totem, we're running willpower, cooldown reduction, max life, chance to cast Wind Shear twice as well as damage to distant enemies, and we're trying to get all 3 crits into chance to cast Wind Shear twice. Moving on to the gems, we're just running Topaz in the weapons. For the armor pieces, we're running a mixture of rubies and sapphires. Now, I play in hardcore, so that's why I use some rubies. However, if you're playing in softcore, I just highly recommend using all sapphires. And then on our amulet and 2 rings, we're running all diamonds to increase our resistances. Now, I did want to go ahead and show you guys the gear that I used to complete all of that gameplay footage that you've seen at the beginning of the video. So as you guys can see here, we do have a base Gandariel's Visage with 1 crit into attack speed. On the chest piece, we got the greater affix to armor there. For the gloves, I need to re-roll them, but we do have the greater affix to willpower. We have a pretty good 85% temerity. On our Wildheart boots, we are missing a pretty hefty chunk of multiplicative damage as well as more crits into heightened senses. We have a pretty decent shard of Virathil, and I actually have a better one in my inventory, but I did not use that for the gameplay footage because I just recently got lucky enough to get it. Then on our totem, we have a double crit into chance to cast Wind Shear twice. For our Mountaineeric ring, we're missing 21% multiplicative damage, and we did get all 3 crits in Endless Tempest, which we don't need. Then we have a basic ring with a little bit of max life there. And then last but not least, we have a pretty decent amulet. However, we are missing a perfect Wind Shear aspect, and this is just a little bit of footage on the training dummy. So as you guys can see here with our current setup, we're able to easily reach anywhere from 75 to 90 mil damage ticks. And then while the boss is staggered, we're able to get upwards of 120 million damage ticks when fully buffed. So as you guys can see, there are a ton of room to grow in terms of your overall damage output if you do have all best in slot gear with this setup. But now let's move on to the skill tree. So for our basic skills, we're running Wind Shear into Fierce Wind Shear to give us movement speed. However, if you want to take this point out and put it somewhere else, you can. Down to our core skill tree, we're running 1 point Predatory Instinct into 3 points Iron Fur because we are going to get that damage reduction buff because we're going to be swapping into bear form pretty consistently with this setup. For our defensive skill tree, we're running 1 point Earthen Bulwark and then 1 point into Enhanced Earthen Bulwark for the Unstoppable. Then we're grabbing 1 point into Blood Howl, going into Preserving Blood Howl to get that extra 15% attack speed. Then for Debilitating Roar, we're grabbing 5 points here for the added cooldown and then moving into Preserving Debilitating Roar. And then we're grabbing 2 points Ancestral Fortitude and 3 points Vigilance. For our Companion skill tree, we're grabbing 3 points into Nature's Reach. Then for our Wrath skill tree, we're going 1 point Element Exposure and then 3 points Endless Tempest. And then we're just going to pick up 1 point Neurotoxin because we have the extra point available. Then for our Ultimate skill tree, we're grabbing 3 points into Defensive Posture, 3 points into Defiance, 3 points into Natural Disaster, 3 points into Resonance, and then 3 points into Circle of Life. Now, I know you're probably asking the question as to why I'm picking up 3 points into Circle of Life, and that is because when you use the Shard of Virathil, it turns your basic skills into a resource spender, and because of that, you actually get the bonus hill from this specific passive. So this is just another way to increase our barrier generation and give us a little bit more survivability. Onto our ultimate, we're picking up a 1 point Cataclysm and then going into Supreme Cataclysm. Then we're grabbing 3 points Quick Shift, 3 points Heightened Senses, as well as 1 point Natural Fortitude. And that's just so we don't have to spam our defensive skills to build up our Fortify. And then last but not least, for our key passive, we're finally able to use Perfect Storm. And the reason why we're using Perfect Storm is just because it's a lot easier to keep up this buff than it is to keep up the buffs you get from Bestial Rampage. However, if you would like to, you can still run Bestial Rampage. It will give you a little bit more damage. However, it will come at the cost of being another buff that you have to manage while you're playing this build. Now into our Paragon board, and before we get started here, I just want to mention that I do have an Electrocution Glyph setup. So if you're looking for a little bit more damage and less survivability, go with that setup instead because it will give you a noticeable chunk of extra multiplicative damage. So for our starter board, running Keeper here. Onto our second board, this is going to be the Constricting Tendrils board, and we are slotting in Protector here because we always have a barrier, so we'll always have that damage reduction. Then for our third board, that's going to be the Height and Malice board, and we're socketing in Earth and Sky here. Onto our fourth board, that's going to be the Thunderstruck board, and we are going to be socketing in Human here for the damage reduction, and this is where you could swap out Human for the Electrocution glyph, as you guys can see in the other variation of the build, so Electrocution instead of Human here. Then onto our fifth board, that's going to be the Ancestral Guidance board, and we're socketing in a Tracker here. Moving on to our sixth board, that's going to be the Inner Beast board, and we're socketing in a Bane on this board. And then from there, we're just going to be trailing back into our third board, Height and Malice, to pick up that Legendary Note. But that's really for the video, guys. That is my WinShear build here for Season 5, and I'm actually pretty happy with how the Shard of Virithil actually turned out. Well, let me know what you guys think down in the comment section of the video, and if you've enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave a like and possibly even a subscribe if you think I've earned it. I will be putting out my Human Storm Slide build video tomorrow, so do be on the lookout for that. And as always, guys, I hope you're having a great day or a great night, depending on wherever you're from, and peace out. I will see you in the next one.